Welcome. Yeah, excited to have everyone here and kick off our workshop today on demo days with Mark Kitts. And we're going to be talking about how to set up follow-up meetings. So this is the second event in the series. Whether or not you went to the first one, you know, we can also share the video and recording afterwards and make sure you have both of those. Um, and yeah, so basically we have a community accelerator and cohort and one-on-one services through Prepare for VC. Mark Kitts has been a great advisor and mentor to a lot of the startups in our community, and really excited for this workshop today. His focus is as a sales coach and strategist, and I'm going to share a few links as we get going in the chat to keep this interactive. And yeah, really excited to have all of you with us. So, kind of to kick things off, I'm going to hand it over to Mark again. Feel free to use a few different features. We have a chat box with a public chat here. We have a messages section and a Q&A where you can raise your hand or text and ask questions as well. And with that, happy to kick it over to Mark.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Hope everyone's staying warm. I know in Connecticut it's about 28 degrees. I was just outside a little while ago. So certainly, I am not stuck on going through every slide. I don't every one of the slides. I don't have a lot. Really encourage you as you're thinking of them to ask questions. Feel free to interrupt me. Feel free to speak up, or if you prefer, if chat is something that's more comfortable for you, we'll be watching that, and Jason will interrupt me. So no worries about that. Much rather have a conversation, hopefully a meaningful and some valuable conversation with you, than necessarily go to the. Oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. So just a little background on me. About 37 now plus, sort of years as a salesperson, as a sales manager, and coaching and mentoring. Always loved throughout my career. Always loved the sort of hunting and for new business and trying to figure out the puzzle, how to navigate, and so on, in those sort of challenging type of opportunities, and found that some of the keys to the success that I enjoyed was being persistent, bouncing back from tough calls or meetings, situations, internal management, whatever it might be, and learned to spend a lot of time preparing. And hopefully that if you're relatively new to selling, hopefully that is helpful for you, in that a lot of your success and maybe your comfort and confidence will come from the preparation that you put into before meetings. So one of the first sort of thoughts I want to kind of go to as we're talking about setting up a follow-up meeting is here we have this idea of you've done a demonstration, or you've had an initial meeting. Maybe it's not always necessarily a demonstration, and there are going to be more than one person involved in the selling process that you need to get to know and hopefully make comfortable with the solution, the value that you're offering. So a lot of times you're going to be working with a focal point, who maybe helps you with setting up meetings and so on. And what I want to sort of share this idea of developing that focal point or others into what I call an internal coach, someone who's doing more than orchestrating, helping you set up meetings and getting calendar invites. Someone with a kind of this ladder idea, if you will, of that they can become a source of information that you need before a meeting. Maybe they're even rooting for you internally, and really trying to help sort of champion the value you're providing over the current approach or competitive solution. The A plus sort of version of this focal point now, internal coach, is someone or multiple people inside this prospective client that is actively helping you sell, is having conversations internal to the client when you're not there, and promoting the value that you're trying to provide or differentiate you in some way. So you can certainly develop someone into that, largely by getting to know them and understand what their motivation is, and what their interest level might be in helping you move along. So, questions about that sort of concept or idea? No? Okay. Feel free to interrupt me anytime. So, as I mentioned, orchestrating a follow-up meeting, the majority of the success of that has to do with what you do before the meeting. So this is largely what this conversation will be about, and what we'll do toward the end. We have plenty of time. Emily Zaccardi, who is the CEO and founder of HollerHype and the head of marketing for Kai, she and I are going to do a live walkthrough of with her, preparing for an actual meeting that she's pursuing. So before follow-up meetings, it's important to take some time to identify what you know about what their interests are, what the organization's particular challenges are, what they're trying to achieve, and maybe a little more importantly is identify what you don't know. So when I say generates questions, meaning as you go through and find and identify what you don't know, maybe who's involved in the decision process, maybe that's something that you don't currently know, that should generate a question that you write down to ask your internal coach or someone you're trying to turn into an internal coach. So you can see how that can be sort of a very helpful process, and then actually meet with your internal coach to prepare for this follow-up meeting before the meeting, to ask the questions you need to ask, as we'll talk about, check on logistics and things like that. So you hopefully, if they are way up those stair steps, and there's someone who's rooting for you and is trying to help you sell, you can really start to orchestrate who's going to do what, say what, and so on. So very important to actually have a meeting. Don't do it by email. Too important. Questions? Okay. So one of the first topics you cover is working with your focal point / soon to be internal coach, would be who's going to be there. And so kind of running down this list, based on the list of people that are going to be there, have you met them before? How did it go? Did they have some challenges with or questions maybe that are currently unanswered? What are their titles and their roles in the client organization? So, and you have kind of two pieces there. So if a CFO is going to attend, what's their role in the evaluation process? Are they involved in the decision process or an advisor? So you want to go person by person. So if there's 6 people in the follow-up meeting, you want to go one at a time and understand where they're coming from. And also identify, if you haven't met them before, what might you want to do before the meeting or during the meeting to educate them, maybe help them feel sort of up to speed because maybe the other five did attend. Um, so very important to identify what their roles are and how involved they are in the evaluation or decision process. Thoughts, questions?
Yeah, if anybody has questions, there's two different sections. There's a text Q&A where you could submit, and then there's a video Q&A, which is like a hand raise, or you can also just add it into the chat as well. But yeah, great job so far. So I'll hand it back to you, Mark.
All right. Anyone can interrupt me anytime. So next topic is, and there's a bit of a purpose in kind of the sequence I have this in. It's not a script, but you try to follow somewhat this sort of a natural flow. So now you know who's going to attend and a lot more about them. Maybe there's some homework that your internal coach is going to do for you. You want to find out what are their overall goals for the meeting. What do they want to achieve? What do they want to come away with? And this really does have two perspectives. One is what does the client want to achieve, and what is your goal? Is your goal to get the next meeting because is now a narrowed down decision process with a smaller group? Is it to close a deal? Is it to get a couple of people, key people, much more comfortable and now advocating for you? So something, things to really think about. So that's kind of overall. Then by attendee, as you're talking with your focal point, hopefully internal coach, is person by person. What are they there? What does that person, your focal point internal coach, think they are there to do? They want to gather information, sit in, if you're in a conference room, I'm sure you've been there, and people that sort of sit, in the back and sit against the wall and don't say much. Are they gathering information? Were they involved maybe in the current solution? Are they going to be defensive about what's there right now, for some reason? Maybe they're there to compare you just to competition. Or hopefully you get a lot of people that are looking to justify a change to a new solution. Obviously then makes that hopefully a greener pasture for you. So a lot of important information to gather about whether you have two people attending or 6 or 10, whatever it is. Okay, so now you got some of that gathered. Now, what objections, what issues are you going to face in this meeting? Are they technical issues? Does it have to do with, for example, maybe the implementation process, or if you're an integration partner, if you've developed an app that is not going to necessarily stand on its own, but be integrated into an app that has an existing audience. What, if any, objections or concerns will some of the attendees have? Certainly, there's always questions about investment. What I mean by that is not only money, but in resources, relative to the implementation and sort of maintenance process. When customers are clients, as I'm sure many of you well know, when they're considering a new solution, they're evaluating the level of risk. Does it worth the time and money and effort to move in this direction? Because change is difficult, for some people. What, if any, concerns might they have about the implementation process? How well this should generate you thinking, how easy have you made it, your implementation process, understood? Can you summarize it on one page, for example, to help someone realize that it's relatively simple and straightforward? If many of you are managing small companies or a startup, what are they going to say if anyone's going to have a concern about the size of your company and whether you're going to be there, in the long term? So talk with your internal coach about how best to handle that. Questions? You can tell me if the objections make sense, or if there are others maybe that you might add. So as you're kind of going through this discussion with people that are got your internal coaches or your focal points, this should lead you to also what information you want to provide. So, for example, if there are new people that you have not yet met that are in the meeting, and they are coming in kind of clean sheet of paper, don't really haven't met you before, don't know your background and your company and the success you've had and so on, it may help to take a little bit of time, particularly if you can't get to them before the meeting, to provide a little overview of your background. Might be an really important step in terms of establishing your credibility. If you're a startup and don't have sufficient in their eyes and maybe a number of success stories yet, your background may play a critical role in helping them feel comfortable. So based on this audience, what balance of technical information, value about based on their the investment of time, money, and effort to bring your solution in, what balance of all these types of information do you want to have in this meeting? What will help move you forward in the best possible way? So as you hopefully kind of following the sort of natural flow, hopefully it makes sense. You can certainly tell me if you think I'm crazy and that things should be in a different sequence. I don't have all the answers. So then is what questions you should ask. And there are kind of two sort of elements to this. Some questions are okay to ask in a group setting, and you want to ask your internal coach about what's okay and what should be more of a private one-on-one sort of information gathering, discussion. Some people some questions may make people uncomfortable, so you don't want to do that necessarily in a public setting. And think about what information, as you approach the meeting, what information do you need? What concerns are on the table that you feel like need to be addressed? And therefore, what questions you want to ask before, during, or maybe even after the meeting. Sometimes, by the way, as you kind of read the room and have done your homework on all the people attending, some people, as I'm sure you've encountered personalities, they are kind of shy, but they'd love to feel like part of the process. So asking someone for some input that has the expertise and might be okay speaking up might score some big points for you. And the next natural piece of this is, what are they likely to ask you? What questions are they going to come from which attendees about across any of these categories? How will they challenge you? Whether that's on the technical side, maybe financially justifying the investment, whether it's ROI or other sort of justification that you've seen in other success stories. You're surely going to get asked questions. I would imagine many of you have been, about average time for implementation and what challenges some customers of yours have encountered in the implementation process. So you want to be ready for as many of those as possible. And this all will sort of bring you to a couple of things. One is, what's the overall best approach? Is it an overview with slides? Is sort of the style of the meeting? Is it just open discussion? Is it, do you want to use a whiteboard? Should you be standing up? Sort of all of this is valuable to think through, so you have the most effective meeting possible. And I think it might be this, the last part of it is just meeting logistics. Is this going to be in person? Is it virtual? Are you going to have, as you look at who's going to attend, are you going to have new people into the discussion that you haven't met yet that are going to be virtual? So how do you kind of connect? How might you best connect with them to help them maybe beforehand to feel comfortable? So is there some information that you may want to, should be shared before the meeting for those that may not be in person, and then to think through sort of the flow of it, and how much time you want to allocate and so on. I mentioned this about client kickoff question mark. If you have a strong advocate, a great internal coach, someone who's selling for you, hopefully you have in many situations, someone who's selling actively for you internally, that has, you can tell has credibility inside the organization, it may be a great thing to do to have them sort of kick off the meeting about what they want to achieve, set the tone for the meeting and so on. And it may help other people kind of move in your direction. So I think that can be highly effective and informative. And that is it. Well, we can get to this later on, but certainly after we're done, I'm more than happy if any of you want to connect one-on-one regarding questions you have about your selling efforts. No charge, absolutely. Happy to spend time with you, listening and learning. Hopefully can share some ideas here. Looks like we have plenty of time. So Jason.
Yeah, we did have one question here so far from Miriam on, could you please give some examples as a question statement, and what does that look like, or what do you say there?
So, boy, there's a lot of questions to certainly that could be asked. I don't know if Miriam would mind sharing questions about which part of the process or what information. Could you clarify a little bit?
I think there was a few slides back. I saw it come in. Yeah, these. Or sure. Yeah, actually, if you don't mind, if you want to add any other context in the chat, but assuming it was kind of around this section.
Oh, okay. This slide. Okay. Questions you'll be asked. Okay, so there are there certainly could come from a lot of background. So if they're asking about your background, then they may ask you, tell us about how you've sort of realized you're a startup, maybe and you've been at this for a year. How'd you start the company? Why'd you start the company? How do you feel like your background and what your company is focused on is different than other solutions out there? That's just a couple examples of questions you may get about background. Let's say on value. Tell me about other clients that have invested in your solution, and what were some of the business results for them? Did they have significantly? I apologize, Miriam. I'm not sure what your organization does. So, did they have an increase in sales? Did they have a dramatic, measurable, noticeable improvement in employee wellness, based on some of the surveys that they were doing? So this, these questions, a lot of them, the perspective they're coming from is trying to reduce the perceived risk in moving to a new solution. And hopefully, Miriam, did I help?
Perfect. Yeah, looks like you did. Yeah, great response there. Any other questions? And yeah, let me pull back up that contact slide here as well. And then yeah, actually while we're doing that too, Emily, if you want to go to the Q&A tab and just hit video Q&A and raise your hand. We're gonna have do an interactive session right after this with Emily, kind of working through some of the examples here.
Yeah, it looks like Mike had a question about if that's my cell phone number. Yes, it is. So feel free to call, send me a note.
Perfect.
Whatever works for you.
All right, awesome.
Jason, am I here? Am I showing up?
There she is.
Okay. Sorry for the technical mix-up with the backstage, but it looks like this works just perfectly. Love the presentation work, and really good to see you, Jason.
Great to see you too. Always great to have you up here. Yeah, I'm thinking, we can do the exercise and then take some other questions from the audience at the end as well.
Sounds good. Jason, does it make sense to give just a little bit of context of like my background and what I'm working on? So
yeah, that would be great.
Okay. All right, cool. Hi, everyone. I'm here in the Boston ecosystem, which I think many of you are. I know that Jason is. Very happy to be here. I've been a founder for about 4 years. I founded my company, Holler Hype, with a B2B2C strategy in mind. I won't get really into what the company does because the exercise that we're going to give a shot at between me and Mark here is actually going to be in the context of another startup that I'm working with in the head of marketing role. So professionally, my background is in marketing, brand storytelling, some product marketing as well, partnerships, biz dev. And in this startup that I am working with alongside Holler Hype right now, a big focus that we have is optimizing our channel partnerships. So that's some context for what Mark and I will be working through in this demo here. I'll share a little bit about the company. It's called Kai.ai. It's a ethical approach to AI companionship for young people. The problem that we're solving is the giant mental health crisis that many people are up against, but we're specifically looking at how it can get a little bit better with young people, especially not in a crisis intervention, but more general well-being, so that we can help prevent any sort of negative downturn from happening. And our go-to-market strategy, as I briefly mentioned, is B2B2C. And I've been trying to leverage a lot of the lessons I learned with Holler Hype and approaching B2B2C and applying them with Kai, which has been really rewarding and exciting to dip into that lived experience with Holler Hype in the founder role. So what we're up against today is we have a really exciting opportunity to get featured at a major Gen Z channel platform. And we have a great relationship with a top executive. I'm not going to name what the channel is since this is like, live, real time happening. My next meeting with the executive is tomorrow. So we thought this would be a timely way to kind of prep for it. So there's real time value going on for me. And the stage that we're at with the prospect is they're a real internal champion for us. They really believe in the solution that Kai has been able to develop for young people. They think it's going to bring lots of value to their platform, but they're pretty big, but they're growing. They have a lot going on the inside. So the obstacle that I'm up against is how to move from a very mission aligned, excited type of conversation into one that's more brass tacks. How do we get into tactics? How do we actually get something like a soft contract together, never mind even a hard one? There's a lot of exciting brainstorming that's been going on, and there's the general attitude of, yes, we're going to get you featured. We love what you're doing. It's just a matter of time, and we have all of these different options up in the air. Let's pick it up again after the new year. So that's where we are today, and my job to be done tomorrow is to move the conversation into something that has some real tangible next steps to it.
Great set. But just Jason, just
Amazing.
a mental note. After Emily and I wrap up, I see Mike has a question, and maybe others do. So hopefully, looks like we should have time. I want to try to. So all right, Emily. So I'm the customer. Ready?
Yes, we'll just stick with we'll just say the customer's name is Mark. We'll keep it easy.
Easy. Okay. All right.
Perfect. Yeah, excited.
Okay.
Excited to kick this off.
All right, so we'll just pretend we're right here in Zoom. Like, hey,
the
Mark,
two of us.
happy New Year! It's super good to see you again. How's everything going?
Good. Very good. A little cold, but getting excited to see my daughter run some indoor track events and up in the Boston area. So lots going on.
Oh, fantastic! That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
And how are things going at the company? I know when we last spoke in mid-December, there was some change happening and new roles coming on board, especially in your area. Curious to hear how some of that transition's been going.
It's a lot. We didn't slow down a whole lot. For the end of the year, based on what you were saying, we've had some role changes, but thankfully, due to sort of driven by growth, creating some I would say positive, some more opportunities rather than challenges, for us.
That's awesome to hear. I think the growth will be appreciated by all of the users on the platform. I see more and more amazing use cases happening on the platform. So sounds like the more the merrier in terms of supporting them all.
Yep. Can't get to all of them at once, but we'll have some prioritization of what's going on.
Awesome. Well, I think that's probably a natural segue into where we left off in terms of where Kai sits with some of the ideas and opportunities to work even more closely together. Mm-hmm. On your end, I know there was a few different feature opportunities that we were looking at, and they all had a different timeline to them and a different theme. And I was wondering if you had any more information from the folks that you're working closely with in terms of what might be the best fit for Kai in your mind.
Well, I think there were some different flavors and certainly some different projects that we could undertake. I think we're going to have to sort of focus on. I think I'd like to see us focus on something relatively straightforward that we can sort of implement, sort of collaboratively implement in the relative near term. I don't necessarily mean sort of like right here, like next week, but also not in June. That's just not waiting that long.
Okay. Yep, that makes sense. Let me know if this still sounds accurate. I think last time we looked at the different opportunities, there was one that's coming up sooner, maybe the very beginning of February, that would be more of a softer yet general feature. Let me know if that still sounds accurate. last time it sounded like there were going to be quarterly updates to the feature library of products on the platform. And this would be just like a routine switch. And then the other two opportunities you mentioned were for mid-spring and late spring. And I have the mid one down as a well-being themed feature, like a curated group of products that focus on well-being. And the latest opportunity being at the end of the spring, being focused around Gen Z. Are those still the themes that your team is looking at in terms of the curated features and the timeline and that
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
approaching on?
Yeah, that's a good summary. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. I've been thinking about it a lot internally because this is a really exciting, not only growth opportunity for Kai, but also I think a really germane opportunity for young people right now, since there's just so much going on all different channel platforms, social media, community type platforms, you name it. It seems like we need really well proven solutions that can drive more positivity and also self worth. So I was wondering if you think it makes sense to strategically build for the opportunity in the middle, the well being themed feature, especially given that it's where we have a lot of our scientific research to back our product, and maybe that could help us stand out and improve lives.
I think that's a good choice. I think the February one, I'm kind of agreeing with you. I think the February one, for two reasons, may not be the best choice to focus on necessarily, because it's sort of here. It's like January's we're almost halfway through, and I wouldn't want it to get lost. As you just you were saying, we've got it's one of many sort of feature updates. So, and June sort of feels too long. So I think that's a good choice. I'd agree with that.
Okay, great. We're definitely excited about it. What do the next steps look like from your end? Are you the person that's going to be leading the charge for that curation, or would we plan another meeting with some more information with folks in your team who are actually like implementing the actual work?
Good question. I think I guess there's sort of three ways I could think of being sort of engaged here. One would be just very hands-on. That's all I'm focusing on. I got too much going on there to do that. The complete opposite would be handing it off, and I that doesn't sort of feel right to me. I think because of the sort of my vested interest in the success of this sort of next step that we're planning. I don't want to be distant from it. So what I'm thinking is that I would be engaged, kind of help you connect with the resources that would be involved in getting the implementation going, and kind of stay involved. Maybe not tactically every day, in the details of what's going on, but stay involved and sort of help work with you to sort of steer it, if you will, to hopefully a real positive implementation. How's that feel for you?
I think that sounds great, Mark. I'm really curious to hear about the other team members that you think would be involved. Are some of those, like the new hires that you were mentioning, are a part of the transition, or do they have a little bit more time behind them at the company or the platform? Just looking to get a gauge of like what that next meeting might look like in terms of being sensitive to their onboarding, if they had just gone through one, or if you would join the meeting, especially if that's the case, to help bridge the conversation.
So sort of the wise guy answer is yes. That I'll definitely join, particularly the early meetings. I think the new hires will have some maybe some input. I'm not going to put them in a leadership position necessarily. So with my steering, I think we'll have because there's some integration involved here. Certainly the right technical leadership, I think more or less, I might sort of position myself as the program manager. So I think it'll be largely technical leadership that will be important to. And I've been kind of talking to them in the background a little bit about what we've been discussing. So it's not new, to them. I think that it'll be important to, I think maybe important to kind of give them when we kick off, kind of give an overview of kind of where we are, what we're trying to achieve.
That sounds great. I was wondering, in that capacity then, are you the final decision maker, or will you and your team kind of be making a decision as a team as more opportunities come to the table for different products that might be really great fits for the well-being cohort feature?
I think that this particular one, I think my seniority, I'll drive this through. I think it's certainly may take some education, and which I may want your help with in some instances. We'll get this started, and I think depending on what the next sort of the evolution looks like, what other applications, if you will, meaning we're going to take as next steps maybe later in the year.
Mm-hmm.
So who's involved and how much I can push it through will probably vary.
Okay. What can I best do to prepare going into the next meeting with you and some of the other stakeholders on your team? Should I have the point of view that it's their first time hearing about Kai, and I should be prepared to do an overview of how it works, how it's been impacting your platform, and where we're headed, and a bit about the scientific research? Or you tell me, what should I plan on presenting?
I'm thinking of kind of two pieces. We're going to have some newer people there that are new to the company, new to this collaboration. So maybe if we can set up kind of an educational, kind of a get up to help them feel more comfortable, get up to speed kind of a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, we'll have this sort of more of a kickoff. So now it's, you don't have people like this far apart. Maybe it's a little less, far apart. So they're feeling like part of the newer people are feeling like part of the process. And we can talk. I know we don't have a ton of time today, but we can talk offline about who's attending and what their questions will be, and and so on.
Okay, great. I think I only have 2 questions left so far. One is around the scheduling for the next meeting. I was wondering if it makes sense for us both just to open up our calendars if you happen to have shared view of your other team members, and we can just choose a time right now and I can send the invite off. Or do you think you need a bit of time to circle up with them?
No, let's do it. Let's
do it.
Because I'll go on to other things. So okay.
I love that. Okay. It's not too soon for you. I think next Friday looks good for me. I have an open window from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. if something in there works.
Maybe let's go 1 to 2.
Okay. I'll send that your way, and I'll keep the settings open so that you can just add invites directly, since I don't yet know their emails.
Sounds great.
I would love to know ahead of time, if you don't mind, if you could just send me their LinkedIn's or whatever's appropriate. Would love to just educate myself on my own a little bit about their background so I can be prepared. Looking forward to meeting them personally, though. My last question is if you'd be willing to actually send the product their way. I can give you a special code that unlocks premium for them so they can have the full-on experience. I thought it might be a good way for them to just get a feel for our product, and they can see how it's been working on your
I think
platform.
that's a good idea. Maybe if you would sort of, like a brief in the email, kind of a brief overview that they can, it's like one screen kind of a thing with some bullets just about what Kai's about and so on, and what they would see in this product, sort of demo overview kind of a thing. So they can scan it and go, okay, I kind of know what I'm looking at. So sort of write it for me so I can just forward it. I think that would be a good time saver.
Awesome. I'll count on that.
All right.
All right, Mark. It's always great to see you, and
Same here.
the next one.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Amazing. Yeah, great job. I put in the chat, asking what stands out from the simulated discussions, and we have a couple pieces of great feedback here. So from Patrick, that you did really well and made it a joint project where you're actually working with Mark to present to the rest of his team instead of pitching, instead of being like Mark and his team on one side and you on the other. So the fact that you're collaborating and making it a joint effort came across really well. And then Mike mentioned the confidence level in the product that you're selling. So the fact that that it's going to help Mark and his team, and it's not like you're coming in there asking like to do a favor for it. It's going to help both of you, giving a new customer and also helping basically helping everyone on Mark's team and his network that you're bringing on board. So yeah, I thought that went really well. A couple other things from my side too were the way that you would reference the previous interactions. You seems like you took notes from the first conversation and were able to reference a lot of what you had previously discussed in the last context. Some of it was like personal, some was professional, and it was a good mix to kind of kick off and flow into the actual project discussion. So yeah, great job. And Mark, what else stood out for you from the conversation?
I thought Emily did just a phenomenal job. Is very calm and collected, and I think others in this session are picking up that it wasn't a salesy conversation. Emily is really focused on building the relationship and the trust, and trying to get to the get to the next step, something that's actionable. So she made me sort of narrow down, or else I might be still all over the place in March. So she did a great job kind of getting me to focus in on pick one. There's three things going on, and pick one to focus on. And then she continued that effort by saying, okay, who's going to be there? What should we focus on? What should we do beforehand? So that was a great job. And also, I'm going to give Emily credit for thinking on her feet, because when we talked about this sort of mock call before last week, and she was going to challenge me with something. I don't know. She didn't tell me exactly what it was, about trying to do something more splashy to see if I would like kind of take a bigger bite. But I'm gonna credit Emily with thinking on her feet, with kind of realizing she got me to agree to a meeting, and that was it. That's good. She knew not to try to take a bigger bite or be more assertive. So that was fantastic. It's really great.
Super kind of you both.
And yeah, I mean, how did you feel going through the exercise, Emily?
Well, I'm curious to hear from either of you. Like, are there any questions that you think I should have asked but I didn't? I guess it's hard to know without more context of the actual project too.
Well, I think you got to the result you were looking for, which was you figured out which of the potential projects or timelines are going to fit best. You got a clear next step on the call where Mark actually went into his calendar and, you figured out a time for the whole team to connect, and you got to understand who the other players in that are part of the decision process or part of the implementation process are. So yeah, I mean, nothing else, from my side that stands out.
I don't feel like you missed anything necessarily. Certainly there are other questions you could ask. What I think that there's a point I want to make for everyone else in, on this, in the session, is that Emily doesn't come from a selling background. So here she is, a founder. What?
You said, yeah, it freaked me out in the beginning. Thank God I found Mark. Found Mark a couple of years ago.
So you can call it freaked out. That's fine. That's that's not for me to portray it that way. So my point is that if others attending here also don't come from a selling background, and you're a founder and a CEO like Emily, you can do it. You see, there wasn't one hard-nosed sort of selling, closing, scary question. It's just about building a relationship, like many of you are probably comfortable doing anyway, but just don't maybe yet realize that it's 80-90% of the selling process is staying curious and keep kind of trying to head toward an objective that you have. So I know Mike had a question, Jason, maybe others do. So it looks
Sure.
like,
Yeah, if you want, so either feel free to use the chat if you want to write it out, or in the Q&A tab, you can hit video Q&A, which is like a hand raise to come up to the stage, or text Q&A is, just asking your question in there as well. Yeah, and anyone that has questions, feel free to do so. And in the meantime, actually, I'll reshare. Yeah, so I pinned your contact info in the public chat here. Really appreciate you sharing that with everybody and spending all the time today, and also offering to have those free sessions with everybody. So as you can see, like Mark really knows his stuff, and anybody I mean, I don't know, any founder that walks in day one and like is ready to sell off the bat. So wherever you are, whether it's your first time selling or here we go. Yeah, I'm gonna bring Mike up, but whether it's your first time selling or you've been doing this for years, there's always something you can keep working on and improving.
Sure.
And Mike, yeah, welcome.
Hey guys, great presentation on my cell phone. So sorry for the lack of like my face. Maybe it's a little better.
That's all right.
But
We can
in the
see
background.
and hear you fine.
But and also it's really cold in New York City as well. Our startup is based in Providence, Rhode Island, but I'm in New York, so it's pretty cold here.
Okay.
So just wanted to ask Mark. So like I have tech sales experience selling with Yelp and Green Energy as well, with Green Energy in based out of Canada in New York City area. So I've done face-to-face sales in English, Spanish, Mandarin. Long story. I've been trying for many years. But the thing that I'm having trouble with right now, Jason can attest to this, is that we're pitching to do our first fundraise for our basically pre-seed round to develop our MVP. We've been able to pitch the idea, but I guess I haven't been really able to pitch like the why I'm the right fit for it. So I'm just curious, do you see a difference between selling? Okay, let's say you have a product you want to develop, an MVP, right? And you don't necessarily have the funds or have the family or friends network with the net worth to be able to fund that project.
Okay.
What would you suggest?
Well, I have a thought or two, and Jason, since certainly this is you're pitching to potential investors, is obviously your wheelhouse. Let's add in, as you were talking, the first thing I start getting curious about is what problem are you solving, and how pervasive is that issue? How are the clients that you're targeting? How are they solving or attempting to solve it now, and how well is it going? Is it internal? Is it with competitive solutions? What kind of results are they getting? And that sort of would become, as you may have that knowledge already, or if you don't, something to to pursue some more, some information you work backwards from. So for example, there's with Emily with Holler Hype, there are lots of applications that track how many miles you run, but there is not another application that does what Holler Hype does. And there's this gaping hole with, I'll just say, starting with runners, that they need inspiration during their training runs. So Holler Hype is that's the problem she's solving. In one of many she's solving. So, Jason, what might you, given your focus, what would you add, or feel free to subtract if you?
No, I think that's great. I'd also add that part of it depends on the discussion itself, where, for example, for me, if depending on who I'm talking with, if it's a founder that's looking to fundraise, I'm gonna go into the conversation ready to highlight being a part of different venture capital funds and angel groups and having that experience, as well as helping startups fundraise through the Prepare for VC programs. If it's somebody that's looking, to partner on events, I'm going to highlight more of our event and community side, and the fact that we've also led events for and built up the communities in Boston New Technology and Startup Grind and other chapters as well. So you can highlight different aspects of your background depending on what's going to be most relevant, and maybe it's highlighting your sales expertise from previous positions. Maybe it's highlighting I know you have a network of especially in the different government roles and organizations, and highlighting what's going to make somebody think right away, I see the tie to this company that they're building, and how having them as a CEO is going to be the most important and impactful. The team is the most important part at the beginning. So yeah, you have the background. It's just figuring out what to highlight there.
I think
I appreciate the feedback from you both.
Sure. I know, Jason.
I could share what helped me in my I was super fortunate with Holler Hype that I was able to tap into a friends and family network. I didn't even know it was there though, so I wasn't aware that there were those stakeholders in my life. I basically approached Holler Hype. There's so much that I didn't know about how startups work at all. It was just an idea that I was obsessed with. So the more that I talked to people about it, the more I started validating the value proposition, and I collected all of those verifications, I guess I'll call them, from both users and from buyers, because it was B2B to C. So I would go and talk to, like Mark was saying, I started off with runners. So I would talk to as many runners as I could that would not be bored by hearing out my ongoing questions. And I would collect all of the yeses, but the actual versions of them, right? Yes, I would use this. That's really interesting. Or I could have absolutely used this in my first marathon, or I would have definitely used this last week in my training run. Those actually ended up being valuable. I thought they were just for me to validate the fact that this is worth my time. What I didn't realize was that I should have been using that more as evidence with the pre-seed stakeholders. And it was really, I think, when I started talking to organizations that would say, yes, if you build this, we'll use it. And we're also willing to be a part of the process with you by giving you ongoing feedback. I think that was what got me from the friends and family stage to actually building the product. And I won't talk our ear off about this because there's so much that I'm learning about. Like I'm definitely not an expert at this. I just went through that phase. I'm currently in the thick of fundraising right now with Kai as well, which has its different set of obstacles. But I think the common denominator in both, for me, that I've seen in both companies is like the go-to-market strength, like whatever the assurances that you can flex in your team, whether it's you personally or other folks, to say, this is an amazing idea and we're going to be able to take it from idea to adoption because we have these assurances. It might be someone on your team that's done go-to-market before, so it de-risks because they have that skill experience, or it's all of those verified statements from like either users or the people that you're selling into, depending on the business model. So I wish I did that a lot sooner. For what it's worth.
Thanks, because that's actually where I'm at. Like where you're just explaining like the pre-seed phase and learning. I'm going through a lot, and I'm glad to be here because I'm doing the cohort program with Jason. He's been a lot of help the past year, a couple of years, on and off, and now finally we're actually have a chance to work together, which I'm very, very excited about.
Yeah, excited to work with you, and yeah, great advice all around there.
Certainly, Jason. Mike, if you realize where whoops, I'm Mike, I'm going off the stage here, but certainly happy to meet offline. When we have more time. So
perfect. Yeah, amazing presentation. Really enjoyed the demo. Great work, Emily, as well. Thanks to all of our audience members and great questions there all around. So yeah, this actually will turn, the same event link will turn into a recording tomorrow if you want to go back and check it out. And then we'll send up a follow-up email with some of those links Mark mentioned and other community events that we have going on as well. So yeah, really appreciate everybody joining.
Just one last note: if you're interested, every Friday morning I send out emails to subscribers, just trying to share ideas from my experience and the conversations like this about the selling process. Just go to my homepage and scroll down, and you'll see them. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Bye.